wherever you are. Make it Truth Frequency Radio.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, in the 1st day of the month, shall you have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, and holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein, but ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Also on the 10th day of the 7th month there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation unto you, and you shall afflict your souls and offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. And you shall do no work in that same day, for it is a day of atonement, to make an atonement for you before the Lord your God. For whatsoever soul it be that shall not be afflicted in that same day, he shall be cut off from among his people. And whatsoever soul it be that doeth any work in that same day, the same soul will I destroy from among his people. Ye shall do no manner of work. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. It shall be unto you a Sabbath of rest, and ye shall afflict your souls. In the 9th day of the month, at even, from even unto even, shall ye celebrate your Sabbath. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, The 15th day of the 7th month shall be the feast of tabernacles, for 7 days unto the Lord. On the 1st day shall be a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein. 7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. And on the 8th day shall be a holy convocation unto you, and ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. It is a solemn assembly, and ye shall do no servile work therein. These are the feasts of the Lord which ye shall proclaim to be a holy convocations, to offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord, a burnt offering and a meat offering, a sacrifice and a drink offering, everything upon his day. Beside the Sabbaths of the Lord, and beside your gifts, and beside all your vows, and beside all your freewill offerings, which ye give unto the Lord. Also in the 15th day of the 7th month, when ye have gathered in the fruit of the land, ye shall keep a feast unto the Lord 7 days. On the 1st day shall be a Sabbath, and on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. I thank all of you for taking the time to join us. I have as co-host with me this evening, Laurel Austin. Laurel, you there, sister?
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Excellent. And I want to give a shout out also to my son and Joy, who are in Israel, and they just not long ago, 5 hours ago actually, spotted the new moon, the thin sliver of the waxing crescent there in Israel. And I'm going to share something that he had posted about hearing the shofars sounding in the land of Israel, and how it was a deeply profound experience for him. Which, I can imagine what that must be like, to be in the Holy Land, among the places where Yeshua and the apostles walked and performed miracle and saved soul and brought forth the ministry and establishing the church, and just incredible history and legacy there in all the aspects and all the various parts of that particular land. And I know he's deeply humbled, and them to be there together and sharing the time that they are. They've been there for well over a week now and having really incredible experiences, and I'm overjoyed for them, and just wanted to, give a shout out to them. But how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. I saw his post too from the Mount of Olives. That's so incredible. He can walk out that calling.
Yeah, isn't it so cool? And they're doing all of this work right now, gathering all of these experiences and meeting all these people and doing all these studies in order to compile and to write his books, which he's done two now, and has a lot of material for other things going forward. But we have in the 23rd, coming up in just a couple days, the sign of Revelation 12 with the virgin clothed in the sun, the moon beneath her feet, a child in her womb, and a crown of 12 stars. And so very interesting times that we're living in, considering that both you and I also went to the path of totality in experiencing the eclipse, and what an incredible experience that was as well. And we're going to speak about that this evening as well, as we've not had chance yet to do that. And we are also planning on putting together a book about that and just what it means. Historically, the ancients believed it to be a sign that portended doom or change or judgment or extreme, just profound change coming on the horizon, a shift in, of course they used it as almost like the Day of Atonement, as to introspect and to examine life and where they were and what was going on. And I know myself in seeing it and looking at the sun in its totality and witnessing it with the naked eye and looking into it directly, it was so incredible, so magical, and really a deeply religious experience for me, and being able to share that with those around me, and then also just with the creation, with the way that the temperature, everything shifted, and it was almost like we went through a magical doorway, and everything, the twilight and the animals, just everything, it was just magical. How about for yourself? Can you tell us about what you did and what you experienced?
Well, I took the kids and we met with a lot of the people that we fellowship with and have Shabbat with, and we all went out and brought lots of food and just really made a day of it. We had some thunderstorm before and then quite a big one after. So there was a time when I was concerned, am I going to even be able to see it? But, Yah just parted those clouds and I was able to get photographed. But when the totality happened, I got the pictures, but I had to put the camera down and just look around because there was sunset all the way around me. It was beautiful. And the crickets kind of started chirping. And of course, everyone around me is, hallelujah and just cheering and everything just because of the spectacular vision that they were seeing. But it was quite the experience as well for me and mine too. So I'm glad that you got to go and experience that.
Yeah, me too. And it was like, even though I didn't, I had two friends with me, Nora and Jill, but the rest of the people we didn't know, but everybody was so kind and interacting with one another, and people were sharing, glasses and different things and speaking to one another. And it was a nice time of fellowship. And almost like a family vibe. We were in a small park in Carnesville, Georgia. Fortunately for us, the path of totality was only like an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes north from where I was in Athens, Georgia. And so we made that journey and got there and settled in and hung out with everybody. And then it wasn't 20 minutes later. And then, put totality hit, and just the experience of all that. It's just truly magical. But it does, reflecting on what has happened and what has occurred since that time. We had almost like the very next day, Harvey came into Texas, and then the floods happened the day thereafter, over a course of the very following week, and flooding out all that land, and just forcefully changing all of those people's lives, and how much destruction and devastation was brought following. And of course, we know that there's something very weird about that storm in the way that it just sat over Texas and dumped all that rain, and all storms now are being manipulated to some degree, and that they are utilizing these storms as opportunity to create destruction and devastation. And when I say they, the powers that be, those that are ruling from the shadows, the sons of Cain, the children of the devil, and that they are taking on very weird paths. But also then we had Irma go up through the coastline, there in Puerto Rico, and destroyed the Bahamas and some of the islands there, devastated every structure, laid to waste every particular standing structure, and just horrible destruction being levied all across the Caribbean and the tropics, and then Florida was destroyed partially. It wasn't as bad as it could have been, and thank goodness for that. Me and my friend Emily, we had gone out and actually did an offering and did a prayer prior to the storms coming in, and praying for the people and everything.
And the ocean disappeared for a while too. After
that's a very strange thing, because that happened the water for miles out surrounding.
And the earthquake in Mexico.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so all these devastations and all the fires going on in the West, and still places of severe drought, and so a lot of doom and gloom going on out there. But also we're going to talk about the Revelation 12 sign. But did you want to add anything with regard to the eclipse or anything?
Well, while beautiful, it was also very eerie. I know there's been a lot of talk about, was it the moon? Was it something else? I will say, when I took my images into Photoshop, I couldn't find anything there. But whatever it was, I believe the Most High is using this. And, doesn't Scripture say that judgment comes first to the house of Yah? And I'm just can't help but feel that maybe that's what we're experiencing right now in America, with the fires and the floods and the hurricanes. Just some of that judgment coming. And just with our house, it's complete prayer, introspection. I want that slate to be clean as much as possible every day. And just keeping my heart right, keeping my walk right, just as much as I possibly can, and just letting, Yahushua's blood just cover us.
Yes, amen. And Yeah, I actually do believe that this Revelation 12 sign, rather than being the return of Christ and the advent of Yeshua's second coming, in my opinion, it will be actually a sign um, depicting the coming of what will be the beast system and the unveiling of the Antichrist, because all of that comes first. And it was interesting. I was watching a video earlier, and I did post it on the wall of my Facebook page under this particular show description, where an individual was talking about and decoding the book of Daniel and talking about the timeline of Daniel and the mention of the certain period of time they're in, and he broke it down, and it was interesting because I never considered it this way before, but he was speaking about how Daniel was talking about this time, and also with the recreation of Israel, and that the timeline that Daniel was alluding to laid it out as far as going forward to 2023, and so and that the Revelation 12 sign from the 2017 is showing us that the coming 7 years of what will be a tribulation period, and so, in my mind, that makes more sense because, again, in my study of the scriptures, it's my belief that Yeshua comes on, and I did a show last night that I just released on YouTube, Signs in the Heavens and the Earth, where I talked about how the Levitical feast days connect to even the creation of Adam and his expulsion, him and Eve's expulsion from paradise, the murder of Abel by Cain, also with Abraham's calling, that this occurred on the 15th of Nisan, and that even the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah was on the 15th of Nisan, and that the birth of Isaac as the child of promise, that this also occurred on the 15th of Nisan, but it was told to Sarah and to Abraham on the 1st of Tishri. And so all of these things show and connect to these particular Levitical feast days as they have been honored and recognized in the lives of the patriarchs and the prophets all throughout the ages. And that even Adam was said to have been created on the 1st of Tishri, and that he and Eve were, Eve was supposedly created a week later, but then after they were tempted and fell, they were cast out on the 8th day, which then the following day would be atonement. And so all of these things, in my opinion, and also I spoke about in that show last night that it's also on the Feast of Trumpets on Yom Teruah that it is said that Christ would come again, and that he would redeem Adam and Eve falling on the during the feast in Tishri, that he would redeem humanity and Adam and Eve and the rest of humanity also on those particular feast days. And so it's amazing to me the fullness of the story when you begin to examine the extra biblical text and you see all these dates repeated and mentioned, and just how it all comes forth in the just a big, huge, beautiful, incredible story. And for those that were not able to hear the show, I'll read the passage that I'm speaking about. I have to find it real quick. But here it is. It says, and this was from a book that I've been reading called The Legends of the Patriarchs and the Prophets. And it says, now it was the first day of the 7th month Tishri, the day on which, at the close of the world's history, the Lord will come to judge the quick and the dead. That the Lord God remembered Sarah and the promise he had made and looked upon her, and she conceived a son in her old age. And so again, this is the only passage. Even though in my research on the Levitical feast days, I had already come to the understanding that Yeshua would return on the Feast of Trumpets, and that even in Revelation where it says on the 7th trump, when that trump is sounded, that the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord, that all of that is tied together with what would be the last day rapture of the church before the wrath of God is poured out on the wicked. But that, there's no other place mentioned which specifically ties the Feast of Trumpets, in my opinion, or that I have seen, to the return of Christ, and that this is when he will judge the quick and the dead, which I thought that was an amazing confirmation, and one that from the work that I did there in the Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch. But do you want to comment here, Laura?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I am here at our house. We have been studying. We're homeschoolers, right? And so, as we're entering these feasts, with the sighting of the new moon today, this is some of the things that me and my children have gone over, that this is the time of Jacob's trouble, when the tribulation should start. Yom Teruah, also known as the day of the awakening blast, also known as Yom Hadin in Hebrew, means the day of judgment, the opening of the books, and the opening of the gates. Also known as no man knows the day or hour. Also known as Yom Hakesh, which means the hidden day. Also means Ha-Kedushin, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, which means the Messiah's wedding day. Also known as Ha-Melech, the coronation of the Messiah. It's Yom Teruah's the 5th Moed, appointed time in the annual cycle of the Moedim, and we're really just given very little details on how to celebrate this feast. We do it with the sounding of the shofar. We went out this evening at sunset and we blew the shofar, and it's celebrated the first day of Tishri, the 7th month, and this day also being the first month, also known as Rosh Chodesh.
Right. How are you with the shofar?
I stink. The kids, however, are quite good at it. Especially, well, both of them, they're really good at it. And Genevieve used to have trumpet. She used to play the trumpet. So she kind of taught Sean too. And now he's a pro. So all the neighbors are turning around, looking, what are they doing over there? So, but we were having a good time.
Awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, since we're bringing that forth, I'm going to share this post that my son put out just 5 hours ago. And if people would like to follow him on Facebook, he is describing him and Joy's experiences and sharing them on Sacred Word Publishing, and also in Purpose-Driven Travelers, I believe, or Missionaries. One of those, you can find it on their page. But I'm going to share this. He says, hearing the shofar sounding from the Mount of Olives was an exhilarating experience. Joy and I walked down the Temple Mount and up the Mount of Olives, getting to our destination about 15 minutes before sunset. We were led to a beautiful location above the tomb of the prophets that overlooked the Temple Mount, and greeted by a camel that stood about 7 foot tall. Joy laid our big water bottle down on the ledge nearby, and we talked with the camel's owner, who who proclaimed this camel, whose name is Obama, was his best friend. We took a couple photos, and shortly after, the camel laid eyes on our bottle. He quickly wrapped his lips around it and lifted it up effortlessly in an attempt to drink from it. The owner grabbed it from his mouth and removed the lid before Obama gripped the bottle again, lifting it high in the air and gulping down every drop. Once in a lifetime. There was a large gathering of people, including some Koreans who were worshiping and blowing their large shofars. About 10 people in all, men and women with a few little boys. Joy talked in Korean with them a little before they left, right after the sun went under the horizon. They had brought a guitar and sang some worship songs. It was nice to meet them. After they left, we decided to stay to look for the new moon. There were quite a few people around with guitars and shofars and even bongos. We'll pick it up on the other side. Be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm going to finish this post from Justin because it's very moving, and it will give all of us a little bit of introspection into Yom Teruah being celebrated in Israel. After they left, we decided to stay to look for the new moon. There were quite a few people around with guitars and shofars and even bongos. We all sang loudly and praised Yahuwah. While waiting, we were asked by a sister if we were there to look for the new moon. We responded yes, and she asked if we kept the lunar Sabbaths as well. She shared some amazing testimony, and we praised Elohim together. We found out later that she was staying at the same hostel as us. She had prepaid a taxi and offered us to ride with her. We were excited about that because the wind had gotten cold, and I was honestly a slight bit weary about the long hike back through darkened Palestine. We talked about stars and cosmology while waiting on the taxi, and she confessed being about 87% convinced of flat Earth. Amazing amounts of coincidence. Later, we were waiting on the taxi to come near the road and met 3 brothers, Yanni, James, and Mike, and 2 of their daughters. They came from many places, including Congo, Ohio, and San Diego. We were praising together and sharing as the loud sound of many shofars began ringing from across the valley. The Jews at the Temple Mount were beginning their observance of Yom Teruah. It was awesome. Many of the Caucasian visitors had trumpets as well. We all started sounding on the Mount of Olives, and it passed around the shofar we acquired yesterday so everyone could sound. It was an awesome time of worship. I felt energy rising up in my bones as we all had fellowship near the place the Messiah went up to heaven and will return to the earth. Acts 1:9. And when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And while they looked steadfastly towards heaven, as he went up, behold, 2 men stood by them in white apparel, which also said, Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? The same Yahushua which is taken up from you into heaven shall come in like manner as ye have seen. I'm sorry, hold on just a second. Shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. Then returned they unto Jerusalem. From the mount called Olivet, which is from Jerusalem, a Sabbath day's journey. And so you can see that just how impactful it must be. I mean, just even reading about the experience and seeing the video of my children there gathered with those on the Mount of Olives and being able to look for and to spy out the new moon and to celebrate the Feast of Trumpets and to hear the sounding shofars in the Holy Land while watching the sunset and twilight come and night in her purple legions. And it just is a really beautiful experience. I'm really happy for them to be able to share that with each other. And
What a
I look
blessed
forward to,
thing
yeah, absolutely. What
to
an
walk where
amazing thing,
Yeshua walked.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and to take all that in. I mean, wow, how incredible the land, and the history and so many those that are believers that have made the pilgrimage to go and to visit.
It really does something to you the first time you hear the shofar, when you've never heard it before. It changes you, and it's a sound like no other.
Yeah, it really is, and especially those that can really sound it in a way that is just, the full force and with all their effort. And yeah, it really is. It's a moving thing. Really
One of
moving
the
thing.
blasts, I believe it's called like Tekiah. It's a battle. It's a battle call.
Right. Right. You remember the story when I was talking about the Enochian calendar, then when Joshua and the priests, and all the people, the Israelites, were going around Jericho for 7 days, and how, it was on Kadesh when the new moon was sighted and the 6 days thereafter, that for 7 days straight. And again, it shows that they were following a lunar calendar, because it's only on a lunar calendar that they would be able to march for 7 days and surrounding the city and blowing the shofars until the walls came tumbling down. Because on a Gregorian, a solar, a Julian or a pagan solar calendar, Sabbath is lined up to occur every 7 days, and so Yahuwah would be breaking his own Sabbath to call them forward to march 7 days in a row, unless you understand that one of those days was Kadesh, and that even though Kadesh is celebrated somewhat, it's a holy convocation. It's not a Sabbath, a true Sabbath. They're able to cook and they can travel somewhat, and in this case, they were able to march around the city, and so yeah, these kind of things show us, and it's those little tidbits of information that we mostly overlook unless we understand their connecting links to the calendar system as set up and as revealed in the book of Enoch, on the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, and why we are to observe things in the manner that we are. But we're all still learning together, and that's the really beautiful thing about all of this, is that none of us has all of the answers. We all have different pieces of the puzzle, and that in coming together and sharing fellowship and discourse and conversation with one another, we are to encourage each other and empower one another to the answers to these riddles, so that we can solve these things and then, come to better understanding, and in accepting and embracing these revelations, to narrow our walk in more intimate relationship with the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and to do the things that we believe they mandated for us, in honoring them in the manner that they set forth for us to do so within their word.
And he meets us in our walk, because with this Ephraim awakening that's happening now with all of these people all around the world coming back to Torah and the feast days and the Sabbath and awakening to flat earth and realizing how real, how true God, Yah's holy word really is. I worried in the beginning that I wasn't getting it perfect, my first year, my second year. And I'm just, that's why you study. You study to show yourself approved.
That's right.
And, I've learned that I used to believe like the rapture or the second coming could happen anytime, and now
Right.
I know there's a promise there by
Right.
Yah. It's not going to come Christmas. It's not going to come Valentine's Day. It's not going to come in July. There's a specific time. And we don't know the year, but we know the time to look for because he told us the time to look for.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, with that passage that I just discovered not even long ago, I mean, it again is affirming witness to the fact that Yeshua's first and second advent align with and fulfill the Levitical feast days, the seven, the holy days. And, I think that's deeply profound because, and I know that, some still don't believe, they think we're under new covenant and that we don't have to honor the Levitical feast days. But, when you read them, it says that this is to be a memorial forever, not, until some such and such. It says
and considering
forever.
the fall ones are not fulfilled yet as well.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And the fact that Christ's coming fulfilled the early feasts and that the latter feasts are yet to be fulfilled, and that we know that his second advent will fulfill those, why would you not recognize those and honor those according to how they were laid out by the Father and fulfilled by the Son? I mean, to me, it just doesn't make any sense, because that, in my mind, shows that the Old Covenant and the Old Testament, as laid out by the Father in prophecy of the foreshadow and foresight of the coming of the Son, being born of a virgin, redeeming us, rectifying fall, defeating death, that all of that fulfilled, Passover and unleavened bread and the first fruits and Pentecost, that the New Testament is a fulfillment of the Old, and you can't separate one from the other. They are, in fact, one full thing, the beginning and the end, just like Alpha and Omega, the Aleph and the Tav. I just don't understand how people want to always separate, and how so many people only study or only read the New Testament and never look into Torah. It's beyond me.
I love how Rob Skiba will say, just rip out those unauthorized commercial interruptions that say Old Testament and New Testament.
Yeah.
So in Leviticus 16:29, and this is referring to one of these fall feasts, says, "And they shall be a statute forever for you. In the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall affect your souls and do no work at all, whether a native in your own country or a stranger who dwells among you." To me, that does not sound like this is just for the Jews or temporary.
Yeah, right. And I'm looking online and seeing all the sightings of the new moon. And it's such a beautiful thing to see people observing and recognizing and honoring the old ways, the ancient traditions, because I know a lot of people think that Sabbath is only 1 in 7 days, and I had just recently somebody was asking me about how even the word Sabbath, it has associations with rest and also with Saturday. But what people don't realize is that those associations they're not ancient. Those are new. Only since the Moedim and the times have been changed. When Israel changed the calendar in observing, going from observing a lunisolar calendar to Hillel in the 4th century, establishing Sabbath and aligning it with Saturday, with Saturn's day, which, Saturn is another term for Satan, and how all of even Sabbath and the regular holy days, all of that was usurped by the adversary in wanting to be like the Most High, and that he knew rather than fight against the church, to just overtake it and rule it from the top down and manipulate and change a few things and make it his own. And so now everybody's observing these, the Roman Catholic calendar and the feast days and the Constantinian pagan holidays, and they're involved in idolatry and have no idea. And, the world is so deceived, even to the point of the cosmology, and they just have no understanding as to the profundity of the deception, how all-encompassing it is, and how most are unwittingly involved in supporting the deception. And for those of us that have awakened to these things and that have been brought out of the churches, which I want to also announce, especially for those that are in this area, that I did recently find a church that I liked, and I will be, and I'm going to announce it to those that may want to join me at some point. But it's an outdoor church. A friend of mine invited me to this church in the woods, where this guy, he's very humble. It's totally not a non-denominational thing. It's but they do church out in the woods, and they allow people to bring their animals, their dogs, if they like. And I thought it was a beautiful thing because we're facing towards the sun, and there's these huge oaks and these beautiful trees and this wide open space, and there's these just the whole setup is outdoors in the woods, and beautiful, and the people are very kind. It's a very intimate setting. There's only I think there was maybe 10 to 12 people there, including 3 of us, and so it was a very intimate setting. But I really liked the feeling and the setup. And most churches, I don't get that kind of vibe from, and so I don't usually attend. And especially if they discover, the kind of stuff that I teach or that I write about, then certainly I get really awkward looks. Not that I don't already, but and so there's a certain extent to the feeling welcome. And with this particular, it was like, tabernacle, being outside and hanging out with the giant family, which is the way I like to celebrate Sabbath anyways, being outside with the creation and studying
Amen
the
to
Torah,
that.
hanging out with my cats. And so, yeah, I really like this church. So we'll be going back more often.
I'm really loving the new fellowship that I have been attending. When I came out of the church, and we were attending Baptist church, but It was like, I think my last day there was in very early December. And, the Sunday school teacher, he went through this whole study on Christmas origins being pagan, brought out Constantine and 336 AD, and all the Odin and all of these pagan origins for Christmas, and how it really didn't have anything to do with Jesus. And I had just been starting my Torah Hebrew kind of walk for a few months, and kind of trying to talk to some of the people in my class about it. And they really hadn't been receptive. So the whole time he's talking, I'm like, yes, yes, And then he turned it to, but that's not what it means to us. And that really struck me in my heart, because I'm thinking it doesn't matter what it means to us. It matters what it means to him, to the Most High. And he has called us to come out of Babylon. And so I eventually have found a few Torah groups that I have attended, and some of them was just really like church all over again. And the one that I'm with now, we do the nature thing. We just have a meal. We sit in fellowship. We don't do a Torah portion because everyone there has spent the entire week reading Torah. And we'll discuss it. But there's no leader, there's no teacher, it's not like organized like that. And I think that's why we love it so much, because it's just focused on the Creator and on the Son and the Holy Spirit, the way that it was meant to be.
Yeah, and I like that, where there's not somebody that feels the need to come forth and kind of, where there can be sharing of conversation and discussion, like, where you go to some churches and then you have a sermon and it's only the pastor that speaks, and he's the only one that says anything, and nobody else interrupts. And a lot of times the discourse is, on prosperity or things of that nature. But with this particular gathering, the individual, he asked us at every turn of the way, he was asking us if anybody else had anything else that they'd like to share. And many people were, just opening their hearts and sharing about, what they thought about the gathering and the fellowship. And I spoke up and told them, about how, in my study and my research, as far as with regard to church and prayer, that it's my opinion that we are to live that and to carry that into every moment, and that church is not just something that we do once a week or that we go to every once in a while, but that this is a state of mind and a way of being, and it's a mindset that we carry into every moment as we example to the world what it means to be in relationship with the Creator and knowing our God and having a deep personal relationship with the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And that's the kind of example that people see, that they recognize that in you. And that's the kind of thing that affects them and makes them, long for the same, in my opinion.
Well, that's too many, myself included, used to go to church and be preached at, usually by a self-appointed preacher. And I don't believe reading the scriptures, that's how the Father meant it to be. I have learned from your example and a few others that have come into my life, that the Father has sent into my life in recent months. I need to be the one sitting there reading the scriptures and allow the Holy Spirit to speak to me directly.
Yes, exactly.
And that's where you have your most profound, moments.
Yes.
And, when Joseph was in Egypt and his 11 brothers stood before him and they're looking at him and they're staring at him and they don't recognize him, it's because he was dressed like an Egyptian.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people, like especially the Jews today, they're not recognizing Yeshua because Christianity today has him dressed like a Roman Catholic.
Right.
So to be able to go right into the scriptures and allow that Holy Spirit to speak to you, it's going to lead you right to Yeshua.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to get these Great Commission books, because I've been reading them, and one of the, because again, one of the reasons I publish the books that I do is in order to get those things I want to read myself into print form so that I can spend time studying and reading all of this material. And these books, all the Acts and the Gospels and the apocalypses of the different patriarchs and the different prophets and the stories of just really incredible people and the way that they overlap all of the dreams. I mean, the way that Christ gave dreams to the apostles and told them to go here and to meet certain people and to bless people. I mean, it is amazing, really amazing, the stories once you come to a deeper understanding of them. All right, we'll be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody, for second hour. I'm your host, Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. I have as co-host with me this evening, Laurel Austin. I want to share something that I also spoke about last night, and it was a testimony from Pilate when he was writing to Tiberius Caesar about Christ and about how, basically the report was about how the Jews, the Pharisees, had conspired to kill Christ, even though they knew that he was the Son of God. And it was for that reason that the Romans came and laid waste to Jerusalem and destroyed all the Jewish people and decimated them. And even though they, the Roman Catholic Church was born out of all of this, they revealed to Pilate how, and this, you can find what I'm talking about at the very end of the Gospel of Nicodemus in the Acts of Pilate, where it speaks about how Pilate went to the Jews after the crucifixion of Christ, because everybody had witnessed the signs in the heavens where the earth was darkened for 3 hours. And so it wasn't just some kind of an eclipse, or whether you believe it was a solar or lunar eclipse. The eclipse that we experienced lasted 2.5 minutes. This lasted 3 hours, and people were walking around with candles. The stars came out, the sun disappeared, the moon turned blood red, and this was for 3 hours time. And so Pilate, after everybody experienced all this, and that there was this grand earthquake, and that many of the synagogues where the Jews were gathered, they were completely swallowed up by the earth. And many of the Pharisee, the priesthood, and those of the church authorities, they were decimated. They were destroyed for what they had done. But anyway, so Pilate goes into the temple. They shut the doors behind him. They bring out their holy books, and they describe to him how, in fact, Christ had fulfilled all of their prophecies in their scripture, and that knowing that he was the Son of God, they killed him anyways. And then they implored him thereafter to not let the people know, because they were in fear for their lives after having killed him, and then so they conspired to keep the truth from the Jewish people, which is still alive and well today. Like most of the, well, I don't know if it's most, but a lot of the Jewish nation do not accept Yeshua as Savior Messiah. There are those that do, but certainly even in that day and age, according to a lot of these extra biblical texts, once you study them, they knew without a shadow of a doubt that Christ was the Son of God. And so, anyways, this is what is described as had happened, and I wanted to share this in order to share something else that I'll bring forth thereafter, and then I'll get you to comment, Laurel. It says, "And when he had been crucified, there was darkness over the whole earth, the sun having been completely hidden, and the heaven appearing dark, though it was day, so that the stars appeared, but had at the same time their brightness darkened. As I suppose your reverence is not ignorant of, because in all the world they lighted lamps from the 6th hour until evening, and the moon, being like blood, did not shine the whole night, and she happened to be at the full. And the stars also and Orion made a lament about the Jews on account of the wickedness that had been done by them. And on the first of the week, about the 3rd hour of the night, the sun was seen, such as it had never at any time shone. And all the heaven was lighted up. And as lightning comes on in winter, so majestic, men of indescribable splendor of dress and of glory appeared in the air, an innumerable multitude of angels, crying out and saying, Glory in the highest to God, and on earth peace among men, goodwill. Come up out of Hades, you who have been kept in slavery in the underground regions of Hades. And at their voice all the mountains and hills were shaken, and the rocks were burst asunder, and great chasms were made in the earth, so that also what was in the abyss appeared, and there was seen in that terror dead men raised up. As the Jews that saw them said, We have seen Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and the 12 patriarchs that died 2,500 years ago. And we have seen Noah manifestly in the body. And all the multitude walked about and sang praises to God with a loud voice, saying, The Lord our God that has risen from the dead has brought to life all the dead, and has plundered Hades and put him to death. All that night, therefore, my Lord, O King, the light ceased not, and many of the Jews died and were engulfed and swallowed up in the chasms in that night, so that not even their bodies appeared. Those, I say, of the Jews suffered that had spoken against Jesus, and one synagogue was left in Jerusalem, since all those synagogues that had been against Jesus were engulfed. And from that fear, then being in perplexity and seized with much trembling, at that same hour I ordered what had been done by them all to be written, and I have reported it to thy mightiness. This was to Tiberius Caesar. But what I wanted to bring forth was that here where it says that these angels appeared, and we have seen Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the 12 patriarchs that died 2,500 years ago. In the second book of the Great Commission on the Acts and the Apostles, the Gospels of the Apostles, I open it with the Gospel of Nicodemus and the Gospel of Bartholomew, which are the two texts that specify and describe the descent of Christ down into Sheol and how he broke open the gates of iron and the doors of brass, and he freed the patriarchs from Adam to the thief that died on the cross with him. And taking them out of Hades, he took them up into paradise and gave them over to the archangel Michael, who, baptizing them in the Arturian lake, then allowed them to enter into the city of God, New Jerusalem, where they are now and have been. And that when you see, even like in the vision of Paul or in the ascension of Isaiah, these different books that talk about the patriarchs of the prophets having gone up through the heavens and also being witness to paradise, they describe seeing the patriarchs and the prophets there. Um, Eve and all of the women and David and the other prophets, all there in the city of New Jerusalem. And so that's where they are now. And that is New Jerusalem that will descend out of the heavens at the end of days, when Yeshua takes his judgment seat on the Day of Atonement, when he comes back on the Feast of Trumpets, that he will take his judgment seat and every knee shall bow and every tongue confess. The harvest will be separated, the wheat and the tares, and then everyone will be judged, and those that are worthy of being numbered among the elect and counted with the righteous, when New Jerusalem descends on what I believe will be the Feast of Sukkot, Tabernacles, that this is where we will live instead of celebrating, the living in tents or this temporary housing as Israel did during their walk in the wilderness, that we will then have what will be our permanent home for that 1,000-year millennial reign. And so the New Jerusalem will fulfill the Feast of Sukkot, and that will be the place those that are worthy, that are numbered among the elect and counted with the righteous, having gained their glorified bodies and their crowns and their robes and all of that, they will be entered into New Jerusalem and counted worthy to reign with Christ for that 1,000 years. And so, in my opinion, that's how the the remaining three feasts will be fulfilled. But what is interesting is that also in this Great Commission book, there's a story about how when Christ said, "Before Abraham was, I am," that the Jews wanted to stone him because they didn't understand what he was speaking about. And he was like, Abraham's been so long dead and you're only this young. How could you have known Abraham? And so what the story actually talks about is how Yeshua sent an angel to resurrect Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to call them up and to bring them forth as witness to the Pharisees that he was who he was. And even after this, they said that he was doing this through Beelzebub. He had called forth the dead and having the keys to life and death, the authority over life and death, and still they could not recognize and were unwilling to understand him as Savior Messiah. It's amazing to me. But again, the story is, once you read all of these different books, like these three Great Commission books, each one of them is 300 plus pages, and there's dozens of texts, which are multiple books of Acts. I mean, it's like layers of books of Acts. The Acts of Paul and Peter, the Acts of Thaddeus, the Acts of Matthew, the Acts of John. I mean, all these books, the Acts of Thomas, and how they all intertwine and intermingle together to give us a full story of the things that the apostles did once they were given the Great Commission to go forth and preach the gospel to the ends of the world. So it's such a beautiful story. I find myself weeping quite often, and being moved by the Spirit as I'm reading through this material. It's just so very deeply touching. But Laurel, I'm going to give you a chance to comment.
Well, spectacular to see all the resurrection in that day, I'm sure. Um, and what a great witness that they're not all still in the grave.
Right.
They've had that resurrection, and they will be joining Yeshua when he comes to bring us over to the millennial reign. But I was thinking when you were talking about how the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they knew that Yeshua was the Son of God, and how just almost insane. If you're a person, you have to be to know that that was actually the Son of God, the Most High God, that you just murdered. You would think they would have been on their knees, repenting, crying out for mercy, but no. And why were they not? Because who their father really is.
Exactly.
And how telling is that? I mean, if anything, in a nutshell, that's another confirming witness.
Right. Yeah,
it's a
fully.
Serpent seed.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And yeah, I was looking and reading earlier in one of the texts, and that it actually was speaking and talking about the devil and talking about his seed and his children, which is, another one of those gems confirming witness as to the serpent really having seed and having his own children here. And you find all these nuggets, all over. It's, again, truth for me is affirmed out of the mouths of 2 or 3 witnesses. And when I speak about and I share this as teaching, I bring forth dozens and dozens and dozens of witnesses, and yet, those that oppose me, they will go, directly to Genesis 4:1, and that's their one piece of evidence, and then there's nothing else in the scriptures that supports it, but that's their one thing. And again, it's my opinion that it's because they're not understanding truly Genesis 4:1, and that the more ancient sources speak about Adam knew his wife Eve, who had desired the angel, and she conceived Cain and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. That really it was her desiring the angel, and that being beguiled by the serpent that resulted in her being pregnant with Cain, which is again why in Genesis 4:1 it's found at the very beginning of the chapter where his seed line is separated from that of Adam's, which is located in Genesis chapter 5. But I'm the crazy one, and you can't provide any more witnesses. That will be the one that they have if they. And again, it's, in my opinion, it's taken out of context.
Even how Adam and Eve separated them. One was a farmer and one was a shepherd.
Right. Yeah, and they knew, that that this was going to happen later. Because even in what I was reading about Adam, and then last night I talked about how Adam had been given 5 books when he was cast out of paradise. The book of the signs, the book of the astrology, and the book of the generations of man, the book of the wars of the Lord, these different books, and he was able to study and to look and to read from them, and he knew what was going to happen to his children and his seed line, and through those that would be born of him. All the way, they even knew that Christ would be born of his bloodline as well, and that he would come forth. Even in the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, it describes how they had the books of Enoch, and they spoke about and knew that that Christ would be born of the line of Judah.
And look what Adam named him. He knew. He named him the acquired one.
Right.
Acquire.
Right. Possession.
And then Abel was named like breath or something like that.
Yeah, Abel was the breath of life. And Yeah, Cain meaning Cayenne meaning acquired possession. And so, yeah, all of those things, in my opinion, absolutely affirm. Um, Adam was the one that named his children, just as he named Eve, Hava, life giver, that she was the mother of all living. Um, but
Nowhere in
it,
Scripture is Adam the father of all living.
right, right. Yeah, so all these things come forth in these teachings as well. And so, in my opinion, when you really open yourself to the possibilities, it helps. And another thing is that the elites themselves consider themselves to be the children of Cain, and they are of their father the devil, which is exactly what Christ said of them. He said that the tares are the children of the wicked one, that the enemies that snuck into the garden sowed them. I mean, just from Matthew chapter 13, just Christ's own words, you have more than three witnesses in and of himself right there. Then you have John telling us that Cain was of the wicked one. You have Paul telling us that it was the serpent beguiling Eve, which caused her to lose her chastity. I mean, just multiple witnesses, and yet that seems to not be good enough for some people.
Well, there's a lot of pride today, and you really have to be in prayer and have that teachable heart, because I've learned, just even coming to Torah, coming to Flat Earth, that it's like, Father, what are you going to show me next? Because
Right.
I have to be ready to reevaluate what I think and to unwind and take everything verse by verse and line by line, because I'm not the one holding the cards. Our Father is. And so I have to keep that teachable spirit, stay in the Word, stay in prayer, and let the Holy Spirit do its job.
Right. And I think that's the best place to be, is to always be open to new information, because we just do not know what is coming next, what is to be. And as long as we are rigid and locked into a certain mindset and unwilling to examine anything outside of our comfort zones, and we only want to learn and reaffirm the things we think we already know, I mean, that's, we're not really learning anything new. We're not really gaining any new insight. And this is the age for the Spirit to be poured out on all flesh. And so much is coming to light. I mean, it is just amazing, the revelations that are being poured forth. I mean, just consider even the last couple of years, all the information that has come to light. It's a beautiful thing. Amazing.
Keeping our eyes on Yahushua, keeping our hearts in His Word, and keeping our prayer line open.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when we get back from break, I want to talk a little bit more as far as just about how you and your group, because I know myself, I've not been part of any group, but you've been part of Torah groups and all, and just how it is that you, as a group, are celebrating and honoring as far as the Levitical feast days and the things that you do. And then I'll talk to people about how it was that we did just recently a ceremony where we offered up fruit and nuts and bread and even some grape juice and even aloe water, as a libation, just to show gratitude to the Most High. And
that's a wonderful thing to offer up.
Yeah, it really is. And if people don't know what I'm talking about, there's an incredible new class of drinks called aloe water that has the actual pulp in it, and the aloe pulp, and it's so very healing for you, but it's also so
Yummy.
Yummy, yeah, absolutely. It's so
Watermelon
good.
peach is my absolute favorite, Zen. You have me hooked.
Yeah, I love those. And the apple and pear, and then the honey and the
Wheatgrass.
wheatgrass. Those are my favorites too. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So definitely check those out, people. You will love them. You can get them from Amazon for very cheap, especially if you do a subscription basis. And um, yeah, and I'll talk about a couple other things too that we've been recently doing because I kind of uh, gave Kathy and Laurel tripped them out a little bit last night because I told them on our weekly call, our Sacred Word Publishing call, that I told them that I had eaten bacon. And they freaked out and they didn't know what to say. But it's
You did
Morning
what?
Star bacon. It's not real bacon. It's a completely vegetarian, vegan bacon. But it is, oh my goodness, it is so good. And so people can check that out too on Amazon Fresh right now. I don't know if people eat the Morningstar products or not, but they're completely vegetarian. They're soy products that are meat, like meat substitute, and they are really good. And so I've been, since we've been doing shows with Chris and Liz Bailey and others about, and since we watched that video, What the Health, speaking about how it's eating so much meat and over consuming meat that is leading to a lot of the health issues and problems, to cancers and diabetes and things of that nature, that I've been really trying to not only eat more fruits and vegetables, but also in not eating meat on a daily basis or with every meal, and substituting it as much as I can with these Morningstar products and these different vegan products. And I know for a lot of people that they're unwilling to try them because they don't think that they are flavorful or that they're good, but they really are. And so right now Amazon Fresh has where you can order and you get 15% off through them right now. So it's a good time to try it if you never have. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. I do want to talk really quickly about how we had celebrated, and this was previous to Feast of Trumpets, because we had our first gathering. For those that came to the Global Flat Earth Debate here in Atlanta, we put a list out and took a bunch of emails from those that live in and around this area, and now we are doing a monthly gathering. And we had our first one this past Saturday before the Feast of Trumpets, because I know a lot of people only have availability on the weekends. So we just went ahead and did it. We'll be doing a follow-up this next upcoming month. But in it, I explained about how I have an altar here in my house, and that me and Emily, we visit. There's this land really close to my house that we walk out to that has these really beautiful trees, really large. I think they're the largest trees in this area. But anyways, it's like a little park, but it's in this undeveloped part of the neighborhood, and nobody goes there. And so anyways, we went there, and it has a level at the very middle portion of it, and there's these three rocks that sit in the middle of the flat that create like an altar, and they're these natural stones. And so anyways, we went out there, and because I have my disability and I use a wheelchair, I was not able to get up to where the altar was. But I had Emily go up there, and we took with us. First, I'll tell you, I get what's called Fresh Harvest every other week, and it's we support the local organic farmers here, and we get produce from them. Whatever it is that I want to get, we get a bunch of fruits and a bunch of vegetables and all that, and we pick it up every other week, and it supports the local farmers in this area, and it helps us to having an abundance of this stuff. We eat a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables daily, and so it's one of those things we're trying as far as with diet and changing all that as well. And so anyways, I had a bunch of fruit, different kinds of fruit, star fruit, grapefruit, oranges, apples, bananas, and then we took out nuts, cashews, mixed nuts, pistachios. We took out bread, the different kind of grains as far as particular breads, and then we took out the grape juice and the aloe juice, and me and Emily, we carried all this out there to this particular platform. And then I had her placing it on the altar as I was praying. And at that time, I was doing it for the upcoming feast, but also praying for the people in the path of the hurricane as far as Irma, and for those that, just for the protection over people, and especially my listeners and all those that were in dealing with Harvey and just everything like that. And so, but what I thought, if people don't know what to pray or have a hard time praying or sustaining a prayer, that a good way, and something that I like to do often, is that I will recite the Lord's Prayer, and then I will also recite in conjunction with it Psalms 23. And putting those two together, it becomes a very lengthy prayer. And if you haven't memorized these two prayers, they're very easy to do. And that they, are really good prayers to put forth in union together, but that, people can pick out their favorite passages or their favorite prayers, their favorite psalms, whatever it may be, and that instead of offering blood sacrifice or burnt offerings, because, that I do believe that we're not required to slaughter animals anymore, but that we can still offer to the Most High. And also we're praying towards the north, whereas I used to pray towards the east, towards Jerusalem. Now, because I know the Most High God is seated on the very center of the vaulted dome, right above Polaris, that I am praying towards the north and sending my prayers there.
That makes so much more sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so, that's what I suggest that people do, because we know that that's where the Most High is seated, and that's where he is located. And so I do recommend that people establish an altar, even if it's not at your house, that you can find, a place in a park or on the banks of a river, anything that it just a flat stone that has not been tooled by iron, that just a regular natural stone that hasn't been carved or shaped by iron tools or anything of that nature, that the Most High, whenever he establishes covenant with the different patriarchs, he always asks them to build an altar, but to build it without working it with any kind of tool. And that even if it's just one large stone, usually they do 12 stones for the 12 tribes. But that, if you can only find one natural smooth stone, in this case we found 3, and I was actually looking for the pictures to share with everybody, but I can't find them right now, but I'll post them to my Facebook group so you can see what we did. But we basically, as I was praying, Emily was placing the fruit on the altar. Then we did the libations to where we offered the grape juice in a cup first and just left it there overnight, and then went back the next morning, and then I didn't want to leave the cup out there, and so we poured it onto the altar and then removed it. But we did pour out the aloe water onto the altar and then offered up all of the nuts. And I didn't at that time, but the next time I will take sage or incense or something of like that, and you can also burn that as an offering, because the smoke from incense carries your prayers upwards as well. And so that's a good thing to do. And I always have white sage here at the house because I like the smell of it, and we burn it quite often. But that's also something that can carry prayer, and burning candles, things like that, are just beautiful ways, in my opinion, just to offer your prayers and to honor the Most High God, and to do it in a ritualized way, and to celebrate these holy days, that we don't have to slaughter animals, and we don't have to depend on somebody else or go to a church where we're inside. And even though I know that it's nice to assemble and to gather with people, there's something powerful about going out into the woods and being in communion with the Most High. Just you, your prayers, God, and creation. And then being able to offer, like even what Abel did in offering the first fruits, or, then back then he offered the lamb, but to, not doing these blood sacrifices, but to offer to the Most High just thanksgiving, gratitude, the things that he provides us, the fruits, the vegetables. We even took potatoes, different vegetables like that, just to show thanks to the Most High God, and to offer up these things in prayer. And Emily, which she had never done this kind of thing before, she's not even a very spiritual person at all, she was deeply moved by what we were doing. And I thought she was going to think I was very weird for wanting to do this. But she was totally cool with doing it with me and going out there and offering. And she, even wants to do it again. We're going to be doing it this Saturday. My friend Carl and Brittany, Brandy, are coming down from Tennessee, and we're going to be
nice.
Yeah, they're coming down, and we're gonna go do an offering again in the same kind of way. But I just wanted to share with you that you can do these kind of things for yourself if you wanted to. Now,
I saw the pictures on Emily's Facebook.
Mm-hmm,
I loved them. I think I even commented on them. One thing I'm thinking of too, you want to make sure when you make these offerings that it's the very best. You don't want to get the bananas that are going black. You don't
right?
Want to get food that's spoiling in your. You give them your very, very, very best,
and take an abundance. Like
yes.
And
all right. What do you think of oils too, like frankincense?
Yeah, I think that could be a good thing as well. Now, Link is in the in the chat room. She says that that's scary, that this is unscriptural, but this is totally not. And because the Most High, when he asks, even with the Levitical feast days, when he talks about a burnt offering, it's the same kind of thing. We're offering thanksgiving to God. If that's something that you don't want to do, that's fine. Then don't do it. But for me, I want to show gratitude to the Most High God. And if if you think that Christ paid the price, and which he did, absolutely. But again, this is just
the blood sacrifice that we don't do now with the animals, because his blood was shed for the remission of sin.
Right.
But these feast days that are still unfulfilled, when I'm reading in Leviticus 23, it says you'll present an offering by fire to Jehovah.
Yeah, and again, as far as just gratitude, you know, just gratitude, offering your prayers and giving back to God what he gave to us. I think it's a beautiful thing. And whether you choose to or not, that's all up to you. You may think, that this is weird or whatever, but there's a really, when we do it, and there's a really a sense of a feeling of just fulfillment, a feeling of having done something really good to God, and that God acknowledges it and appreciates it and thanks us for acknowledging him and wanting to, give back to him in the way that he gives to us all the time. And so all we're doing is showing our appreciation. Emily is a person that works for me. And so...
well, and I've not seen scripture since Leviticus that says to stop giving offering. It's just an act of obedience, like prayer, reading scripture, even like baptism, witness. It's an act of obedience. I agree on the blood sacrifice, but an offering to the Lord, I mean, Yah says that's a sweet savor to him.
Right. And then also I'll tell you the story of Melchizedek. Melchizedek was told to bring bread and wine offerings. And that, is in the priesthood, that not doing these blood sacrifices, but that, like myself, I believe I've been called to be a scribe unto the Most High. And so I take very serious my relationship with him. And so I choose to offer thanksgiving to him in such manner. And again, this is all personal, but I do feel a closer connection to God having an altar in my house to where I can offer up my prayers, direct my prayers, put in, my holy books, my Bible, the pictures of my family on this altar. And, again, if you choose not to, that's your choice. But I don't think it's, an evil thing at all. I think it's something that could be wonderfully pleasing to the Most High God. And that all of us really, we are his children. And it's like, how children draw pictures of for their mothers or fathers on Father's Day or Mother's Day. That for me, it's kind of like that I'm just showing gratitude to God for all that he does for me and everything. And with the chances of each new day, the opportunities, the blessings of every moment. And so
on Yom Kippur, do you usually fast that day?
I have not, only because I have to take certain medications and I have to take food to do that. But that's something that I really have to work out for myself, as far as, whether I can do that and to make that. But again, with, my disability, it makes my situation a little bit different, as far as also with the, the Sukkot and all that. But I try to do things the way that I can in the best manner that I can. And I think that's all we can really do. And that each one of us, we're trying to walk this out in the best way that we can, and to work out our salvation through fear and trembling. And so, none of us are perfect. We're all learning, and we're all trying to figure these things out together. But, we all have different ways and different ways of honoring God. And this is just my way.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to spend that day in prayer. I've heard that it's based on the belief that on the first of Elul, Moses ascended to Mount Sinai in order to receive the second set of the stone tablets, and that he descended on Yom Kippur.
Hold on, 614. We're going to take your call in just a second.
Is this a practice we should follow? I mean, there's no harm in doing introspection and repentance, but we're to remember not to add or take away from Scripture. So I'm just trying to be really careful of not doing that.
Well, yeah, of course. All right, hey, I'm going to take this call and see if I can figure out how to do this correctly. Area code 614, are you there?
Hello, brothers and sister Laurel. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you? But who is this, and where you're calling from? Australia, right?
Yeah, my name's Mitchell. I'm calling from Australia.
Hey, Mitchell.
Hey, I'm kind of calling about the Big Money Challenge. Well, yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm a flat earther through and through, but I've kind of got an experiment that could go either way. I'm planning a trip on New Year's Eve to go to Antarctica. The flight's from Melbourne, and before kind of people jump to conclusions and think that, won't get commission, that sort of thing. This is a commercial tourist flight that runs once a year, and it'll go from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So in theory, it should verify if there's a midnight sun or not. And also, we go over the South Magnetic Pole. So I'm going to be taking compasses and cameras to film the thing. So if there is a South Magnetic Pole, we would be going over it, and it should flip around or go crazy or that sort of thing. So it's kind of just an experiment to kind of get some hard evidence on a place that, as far as I know, no one has kind of been down there as a video.
Well, when is this that you're going down? You're saying that near the winter solstice? Because isn't that when the 24-hour? Yeah, your summer. So the winter solstice, right? That's when it's supposed to be the supposedly the 24-hour sun. Is that correct?
Well, I think it's anywhere below the Antarctic Circle in most of summer. For the Southern Hemisphere, there should be mostly a 24-hour sun, or at least 23-hour anyway. And so I think, your winter solstice and our summer solstice is the 21st of December, something like that.
Right.
Uh-huh. And this flight will be the 31st of December, so it's not too far after it. So in theory, it's they do advertise that there is a 24-hour sun that you will be seeing. So I'm going to be taking a GoPro and filming the whole thing, 12-hour flight. So
well, I'm interested in seeing whether you can capture that, because it's intriguing, and I'd like to actually see that. As far as, but are you filming this from an airplane, or are you actually going to be landing somewhere? Because I would think if you're filming it just from an airplane, how are you going to film 24 hours?
No, well, that's just the thing. It's going to be a 12-hour flight, so it's going from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., so I'm only going to need the 12 hours that you do go down there. So I'm just going to be, there's PowerPoints in the plane, like a USB for the GoPro, so I'm just going to put it on time-lapse. And it'll only be filming from the plane. It doesn't land. It's just a tourist flight, and they say that it's the only one in the world that does run. So I don't see any other way anyone can get down there to do this experiment other than this way.
Yeah, I'd like to see somebody down there, at McMurdo or whatever, one of those bases in Antarctica. I want to see them film the sun moving in full circle, 24 hours, like they show up there in the Arctic region. Because in my opinion, I don't believe it's possible, because I don't believe that we're on a globe, or that there is a South Pole. But I'd be, interested in seeing that if somebody could provide that film to me.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm going to be trying to do. So yeah, I'm going to be seeing if there is a South Magnetic Pole and whether there is a 24-hour sun, because they'll confirm that we do live on a flat Earth, because the sun can't be in the South Pole like for 12 hours of the night if it's meant to be over the other side of the plane. So this is kind of going to like get some hard evidence on somewhere that no one has kind of given evidence from the flat Earth perspective anyway before from our community.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that plays out. But even 12-hour span, I think it would be better to get like 3 days, because if the sun is moving in circuit and as fast as it's supposed to be moving in circuit, and because it's so far south, the furthest it's going to move south near the Tropic of Capricorn, it's going to keep the southern latitudes lit up mostly. But really, we would need to see that the sun and the daylight remaining for, like 72 hours in the way that it does in the Arctic regions during the summer solstice, because I don't think it would do that. But who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's a massive topic for debate, and it needs to be done to be seen. So yeah, I'll put my hand up to do it. It is a bit expensive, so I'll have set up a GoFundMe if anyone's interested in helping me out. I'm going to put most of my own money into it, but yeah, if you look up on the GoFundMe site, Flat Earth Antarctic Flight, I appreciate all the support. Even just if you share the link, that'll be great. Just kind of get the word out there, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting thing. So December 31st. I'd love to, also fund somebody doing an Arctic exploration where they are filming, the sun and its movements from east to west and north to east and back during the summer solstice. But yeah, that's awesome, brother. That's an amazing thing that you're going to do, and I wish you luck in all of that. And certainly follow up with us and let us know what you discover.
Have fun.
Yeah, I will do. Yeah, thank you. It should be fun. Yeah, hope, see what comes out of it, and get some hard evidence. But thank you for taking my call, and appreciate it, and have a good night, and love the show.
Yeah, no problem at all. Hey, I would also suggest that you get one of those trackers on your phone, so that while you're going through the flight, it can show you the path that you've taken and everything. And so you can go back and look at the data and all that, because a lot of people have been doing that when they're taking these kind of flights and stuff now too.
Yeah, that would be great. But I was thinking that, well, I am trying to get my hands on a field GPS, which is kind of different to a normal GPS, but I think it's still, like, I've been doing some research into the GPS system, and as far as I can tell, it's all ground-based. There's no satellites involved in it. So anything that kind of would, I think, 200 kilometres south of Australia would just pretty much drop off the radar. But I'll definitely, that's another thing that I want to try and sort out as well, so we can see how far the range will go on these GPS systems.
Yeah, well, you've got some time. Well, good luck to you, brother. We're at the end of the show. God bless everyone. Thank you, Laurel.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Shalom.